Nobody told you the truth about your work ethic. Not your parents, not your teachers, not the motivational content you have been consuming for years. They all said the same thing: work harder, earn more, get ahead. What they never said is that your willingness to work harder is not your weapon, it is theirs. What's up, guys? Today we are breaking down one of the most quietly devastating ideas in modern economics and connecting it to a 500-year-old playbook that the people at the top of this system have never stopped using. This is not about hustling differently. This is about finally understanding the game you are already inside. Here is where the discomfort starts. There is a concept in labor economics called the productivity wage gap. Research from the Economic Policy Institute has tracked this number for decades. Between 1979 and 2020, worker productivity in the United States grew by nearly 62%. Wages, adjusted for inflation, grew by 17%. You are producing more value per hour than any generation before you. And you are keeping a smaller share of it than any generation before you. The gap between what you produce and what you are paid is not a rounding error. It is the business model. Think about what that means in your actual life. Every time you stayed late to finish a project, every time you absorbed an extra responsibility without asking what it paid, every time you told yourself that the effort would eventually be recognized, that effort was being converted into someone else's return. Not cynically, mechanically. That is how the structure was built. Your ambition is not your ladder out. It is the fuel that keeps their engine running. And this is where it gets uncomfortable. Machiavelli wrote something that reads almost like a warning label for the modern economy. He wrote that a ruler does not want his subjects to be rich and independent. Most people read that as ancient political theory. It is not. It is a description of the incentive structure you are living inside right now. A workforce that is financially secure has options. A workforce that is one paycheck from panic is compliant. Not because any single employer sat down and engineered it that way, but because the system selects for it, rewards it, and preserves it automatically. The student debt architecture is the cleanest illustration of this. Research from the Roosevelt Institute, a nonpartisan policy organization, found that the expansion of income-based repayment plans produces a counterintuitive behavioral effect. Rather than accelerating payoff, they extend it sometimes by decades. The monthly payment feels manageable. The psychological pressure drops slightly, and the borrower stays productive, employed, and too financially exposed to take real risks. That is not a flaw in the policy design. That is the policy doing exactly what it was built to do. Most people stop here. Don't. Because the real damage is not just financial, it is neurological. Dr. Anandi Mani, an economist at Oxford University, co-authored research showing that financial stress measurably reduces cognitive function. People under economic pressure perform significantly worse on tests of problem solving and impulse control, not because of stress in the abstract, but because the mental load of managing scarcity literally occupies working memory. You have less brain available to plan your escape. The tighter the pressure, the less capacity you have to respond to it. The trap is self-reinforcing by design. Machiavelli described the governing principle this way: fortune is a woman, and if you wish to keep her under, it is necessary to beat and elude her. Read that not as a statement about aggression, but about persistence under resistance. The people who break out of this cycle are not necessarily smarter or more talented. They are more stubborn about staying operational when the pressure is highest. They protect their cognitive bandwidth the way a surgeon protects their hands. They refuse to let the urgency of today consume the strategy for tomorrow. That stubbornness, that refusal to run purely on reaction, is the first real differentiator. Here is where the internal shift becomes a behavioral one. The first move is perceptual. and it is not optional. The people who stop being financially trapped have one thing in common before any strategy change. They stop reading their situation as personal failure. The moment you stop asking what is wrong with you and start asking what structural incentive is producing this outcome, your brain stops defending its ego and starts analyzing the problem. That is a completely different cognitive mode. Solutions do not appear in the defensive mode, they appear in the analytical one. The second move is about position in the labor market. Wage premiums do not go to the hardest workers. Research across industries is consistent on this. They go to the least replaceable ones. Broad competence keeps you employed. Narrow excellence gives you leverage. Those are not the same outcome. Finding the specific intersection of what you can do, what is difficult to find, and what someone will pay a premium to access, and then going deep into that intersection rather than wide, is a fundamentally different career strategy than what most people were taught. It is slower to build. It is significantly harder to displace. The third move is social, and it is the one people resist most. There is a well-documented tendency in behavioral psychology called reference group, anchoring you calibrate your ambitions to the people around you, not through intention but through constant exposure. Your ceiling is partly a social construction. The people in your immediate environment do not limit you on purpose. They limit you by example, by what they treat as realistic, by the conversations they are willing to have. Deliberately placing yourself in environments where the financial ceiling is higher, professional networks, specific online communities, rooms with different problems than yours, does not require abandoning anyone. It requires expanding the range of examples your brain has access to, and your brain will update accordingly. The system is not going to reform itself in your favor. That is the honest version of what the data shows. Waiting for the terrain to become fair is a strategy that benefits the people who designed the terrain. But a rigged game can still be navigated. The people who stop being poor, not temporarily, but durably, are the ones who learn the rules clearly enough to find where the rules break in their favor. You already know the game is not fair. The question is what you do with that information starting today. That is the difference between someone the system can predict and someone it cannot. If this shifted something for you, hit like and subscribe to Vertex Vision. Leave a comment below, not eventually. This week, what is the first structural move you are making? Get specific. Let the rest of us hear it.